Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The sound of the champagne glass shattering against the marble floor was loud, but the silence that followed was deafening. I didn't just cross a line. I had sprinted across it, set it on fire, and danced in the ashes. My back was pressed against the cold, gilded wall of the grand ballroom, my chest heaving as if I'd just run a marathon. Staring back at me, wiping a trace of saliva from his lip with a thumb clad in a diamond ring, was Julian Vane. The heir, the tyrant of St. Sterling University, the man who had made my life a living hell for 3 years. And I, Ren Arisato, the scholarship student with nothing to lose, had just grabbed him by his bespoke lapels and kissed him. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was a weapon. It was the only way to shut him up. The crowd of elites, draped in silk and old money, stood frozen. A collective gasp had sucked the oxygen out of the room. Julian's eyes, usually the color of glacial ice and filled with detached cruelty, were wide, blown out, darkening by the second. I expected a fist. I expected his security team to drag me into a back alley. I expected my expulsion notice to be signed before the glass shards were swept up. Instead, Julian stepped forward, the crunch of crystal under his dress shoe echoing like a gunshot. He leaned in, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that vibrated through my sternum. "Do it again," he whispered. "To understand why I kissed the devil, you have to understand the hell he built for me." St. Sterling University was a playground for gods, and Julian Vane was Zeus. He was 6'2" of aristocratic disdain, possessing a face carved by angels and a soul forged in the deepest pits of narcissism. I was the mistake, the charity case, the architecture student on a full ride who dared to breathe the same filtered air as the Vane dynasty. For 3 years, Julian hadn't just bullied me, he had curated my suffering. He didn't use juvenile tactics like shoving me into lockers. No, Julian was an artist. He would buy the coffee shop where I worked just to fire me. He would have my final models accidentally crushed by movers. He ensured that at every gala, every mixer, and every lecture, I was isolated. He made me invisible to everyone but him. "You don't belong here, Ron," he would say, his voice smooth like velvet over gravel. "Go back to the gutter. You're staining the scenery." I hated him with a violence that frightened me. But hate is a form of passion, isn't it? It requires energy. It requires obsession. And God, was I obsessed with hating him. The night of the winter solstice gala was supposed to be my breaking point. I was working as a server, humiliating enough in front of my classmates, when Julian cornered me near the orchestra. He began a monologue about my father's debts, about how my scholarship was hanging by a thread he held in his hand. He was dissecting my dignity, piece by piece, smiling that cruel, perfect smile. I snapped. The tray of drinks didn't matter. The job didn't matter. I just wanted to stop the noise. I wanted to shock the composure out of him. So I kissed him. Now, standing in the wreckage of that moment, the "do it again" hung in the air like a guillotine blade. I shoved him away, my hands shaking. "Go to hell, Vane." I turned and ran. I didn't wait for the fallout. I sprinted out of the ballroom, into the biting winter rain, stripping off my bow tie as I ran until my lungs burned and the lights of the gala faded into the distance. I locked myself in my dorm room, shoved a chair under the handle, and waited for the end of my life. But the end didn't come. The next morning, I woke up to a silence that felt heavier than the noise. No expulsion email. No police at my door. I walked to my first class, Advanced Structural Engineering, expecting the ambush. The lecture hall was buzzing. As I entered, the noise died. Eyes followed me. Whispers hissed like steam. I kept my head down, sliding into my usual seat at the back. Then, the chair next to me scraped against the floor. I froze. That seat was always empty. No one sat next to the charity case. I looked up to see silver hair and a sharp jawline. Julian Vane sat down, pulling out a fountain pen that cost more than my tuition. He didn't look at me. He simply opened his notebook. "You're in my seat," I managed to choke out. "I bought the row," Julian replied, his voice devoid of emotion. He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were different today. The ice had cracked. Beneath it was something hot, predatory, and confusing. "And stop trembling, run. It's unsightly." "What are you doing?" I hissed, aware that the entire class was watching us instead of the professor. Why am I not expelled? Julian began to write, his handwriting elegant and sharp. Because you owe me. Oh, you? You've ruined my life for 3 years. And last night, you assaulted me in front of the city's elite, Julian countered calmly. He paused, the pen hovering over the paper. My father wanted you gone. I told him. I was playing with my food. My stomach turned. Is that what I am? Food. Julian turned fully toward me. He reached out, his hand hovering near my face. I flinched. He stopped, his fingers inches from my cheek, catching a loose strand of my black hair. You were, he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips. But I think the diet has changed. The weeks that followed were a psychological siege. The overt bullying stopped. The sabotage ended. In its place came something far more terrifying, attention. Julian was everywhere. He sat with me at lunch, creating a perimeter of silence that no one dared cross. If I needed a book from the library that was checked out, it appeared on my desk the next morning. If I looked tired, a cup of premium espresso was placed in my hand before I could protest. It wasn't kindness. It was possession. He was marking his territory. He was showing the university that the toy he had been breaking was now his to fix, or break further. The confusion was eroding my sanity. I cornered him 3 weeks later in the one place I thought I was safe, the rooftop of the architecture building at Sunset. Stop it, I shouted. The wind whipped my hair across my face. Julian was leaning against the railing, smoking a cigarette, a habit I didn't know he had. He looked like a fallen angel, bathed in the orange glow of the dying sun. Stop what, Run? The gifts. The sitting with me. The staring. Everyone thinks we're what? He took a drag, exhaling a plume of smoke. Sleeping together. Julian smirked. It wasn't his usual cruel sneer. It was amused. And that bothers you. I hate you. I screamed, the emotion tearing at my throat. I hate you for everything you've done. You don't get to pivot to nice guy just because I kissed you once. Julian dropped the cigarette and crushed it under his boot. He crossed the distance between us in 3 long strides. He grabbed my wrist, pinning me against the concrete ventilation unit. You think I'm being nice? He laughed, a dark, hollow sound. Run, you have no idea how the world works. My father, the board, the investors, they saw you humiliate a vein. They wanted your head on a pike. They wanted your family destitute. My breath hitched. So, you're protecting me. I'm keeping you for myself, he corrected, his face inches from mine. There is a difference. If they destroy you, I don't get to play anymore. And after that kiss, I realized I was bored with breaking you. I want to see what happens when I put you together. You're insane. And you're a liar, he whispered. You say you hate me, but your heart is hammering against your ribs. Your pupils are dilated. And you haven't pushed me away. He was right. My body was betraying me. The adrenaline of the confrontation had morphed into arousal. It was sick. It was twisted. It was exactly what he wanted. Why me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You could have anyone. Julian's expression faltered for a fraction of a second. A crack in the armor. Because you're the only one who fights back. Everyone else just submits. They want my money or my name. You? You just want me to die? It's refreshing. He leaned in, his nose brushing mine. Kiss me again. Not out of spite. Do it because you want to. I don't. I lied. Prove it. He didn't force me. He waited. He held me there, trapped in his orbit, daring me to resist the gravitational pull. And I, the fool, the moth drawn to the incinerator, closed the gap. This kiss was different. It wasn't a clash of teeth. It was a devouring. Julian kissed like he commanded, with absolute authority. He tasted of tobacco and expensive mint. His hands, usually so cold, burned through my shirt. I grabbed his hair, pulling him closer, hating myself with every second, yet unable to stop. We broke apart gasping. Julian rested his forehead against mine, his eyes closed. Now, he whispered, you really belong to me. But belonging to a vein came with a price tag I couldn't afford. The turning point came a month later. The protection Julian offered had a blind spot, his own family. I returned to my dorm to find the door unlocked. Inside, sitting on my meager twin bed, was a man who looked like an older, more reptilian version of Julian. Silas Vane. Mr. Arisato. Silas said, not bothering to stand. We have a problem. Get out, I said, though my knees were shaking. My son has developed a fascination, a distraction. Silas stood up, smoothing his suit. I tolerated it when it was mere bullying. Character building for him. But this public display? This romance. It ends. He placed a check on my desk. This is $50,000. Take it, transfer schools, and disappear. If you don't, I will ensure your father's small bakery faces a health inspection it won't survive. I will ensure you never work in this country. He walked past me, pausing at the door. Julian is to marry the heiress of the Kincaid Group in the spring. You are a stain on his future. Remove yourself, or be removed. I stared at the check. It was more money than I had ever seen. It was freedom. It was safety. And it meant leaving Julian. The realization hit me harder than the threat. When had the monster become the anchor? When had the tormentor become the only person who made me feel real? I took the check. I tore it into 4 pieces. I didn't run. I went to the lion's den. I went to the Vane estate. It was raining again, because of course it was. I looked like a drowned rat banging on the mahogany doors of the mansion. The butler tried to turn me away, but Julian appeared at the top of the grand staircase. He looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes. When he saw me, he descended the stairs, not with his usual grace, but with urgency. Wren, what are you doing here? Your father came to see me, I said, water dripping from my nose. Julian stopped. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. What did he say? He offered me money to leave. He threatened my family. Julian's hands clenched into fists at his sides. And I tore up his check. Julian stared at me. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Genuine, terrified fear. You idiot. You stupid, stubborn idiot. Do you know what he can do? I don't care. I shouted, my voice echoing in the cavernous hall. Let him try. I'm tired of running, Julian. I'm tired of being the victim. And I'm tired of you pretending you don't care. I never said I didn't care. Julian roared back. The mask was gone. The composure was shattered. I tried to make you leave. Why do you think I was so cruel, Wren? In the beginning, I wanted you to quit. I wanted you to drop out and go somewhere safe, far away from this toxic cesspool of a life I'm trapped in. But you wouldn't break. You just shine brighter. He walked up to me, grabbing my shoulders, his grip bruising. I bullied you because looking at you hurt. You were free. You were talented. You were everything I wasn't allowed to be. And now I can't breathe if you're not in the room. The revelation washed over me. The logic was twisted, broken, and utterly consistent with the damaged man standing before me. So what do we do? I asked, looking up into his storm cloud eyes. We burn it down, Julian said, a dark smile touching his lips. My father cares about one thing, the legacy, the reputation. If I choose you publicly, if I reject the Kincaid marriage and align myself with the scholarship student, it creates a scandal he can't hush up. He can't destroy you without destroying me. You'd lose your inheritance, I warned. You'd lose the crown. Julian looked around the opulent, cold mansion. I never wanted the crown, Wren. I just wanted a reason to take it off. He kissed me then, right there in the foyer of his ancestral prison. It tasted like rain and rebellion. The war that followed was brutal. Silas Vane threw everything at us. He froze Julian's accounts. He sent lawyers. He leaked rumors to the press. But he underestimated 2 things. First, he underestimated my resilience. I had been poor my whole life. I knew how to survive on ramen and spite. Second, he underestimated Julian's brilliance. Julian didn't need his father's money. He had been quietly investing his own trust fund in tech startups for years. He was independent, and Silas hadn't noticed because he was too busy controlling Julian's social calendar. We moved into a small, cramping apartment near the campus. For the first time, Julian Vane washed his own dishes. He complained about the water pressure. He learned to make toast. And I watched the king of St. Sterling become just. Julian. One night, months later, we were sitting on the fire escape, sharing a cheap bottle of wine. The city lights flickered below us. Do you regret it? I asked, looking at his profile. He was still beautiful, but sharper now. Realer. Julian turned to me. He took a sip of wine and shook his head. Regret what? Losing the mansion? The fake friends? The arranged marriage? Losing your power, I said. Julian laughed softly. He reached out and took my hand, intertwining our fingers. He looked at me with an intensity that still made my knees weak. I didn't lose my power, Run. I just realized that power isn't about controlling everyone around you. He brought my hand to his lips, kissing the knuckles. Power is having the one thing everyone else wants, and knowing they can't touch it. I looked at him, my bully, my lover, my partner in crime. The hate was gone, replaced by a love that was just as fierce, just as dangerous. You're still arrogant, I teased. And you, Julian smirked, pulling me in for a kiss, are still mine. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Rin bring the tyrant to his knees, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a man who bullied you just to keep you safe, or is some damage unforgivable? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, Yaoi, Man 1. Julian Vane, silver hair, icy blue eyes, sharp jawline, wearing unbuttoned white dress shirt, leaning casually against a concrete railing, smoking a cigarette, expression of possessive amusement, dynamic lighting from sunset. Man 2. Renari Sato, black hair, defiant expression, wearing a rumpled university blazer, grabbing Man 1 by the collar, intense eye contact. Blushing slightly. Background is a university rooftop at dusk, orange and purple sky, city skyline in distance, cinematic composition, dramatic atmosphere, wind blowing hair, sharp focus.